Welcome along to another one of our webinars, this one looking at culturally safe and secure legal. Be some problems with our audio. Can you hear us now? Terrific. Hands are going up, so I think we've fixed that issue there. Terrific. Thank you. So just a couple of housekeeping things before I hand over to Dean and Warren to talk to us about the experiences of knowmore and the way in which that service has worked with Aboriginal clients and communities. A couple of those housekeeping things. We're hoping to record a copy of this webinar and make it available to you. We'll email around a copy of the recording, assuming the technology works. We'll also email around a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, so probably no need to furiously scribble notes. As far as questions go, you can ask questions a couple of ways. You can type a question into the questions box on your GoToWebinar control panel there, or you can press that button that looks like a hand. We'll see a hand, something that looks like you putting up your hand through our control panel here. We'll be able to unmute your microphone and you'll be able to ask a question that way. So without any further ado, I might hand over to Warren, the Executive Officer of knowmore Legal Service, who's here with Dean Bell, an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander engagement, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander engagement team leader, to talk about the lessons from knowmore's work in providing culturally safe and secure legal services. Thanks, Warren.
Thanks, James. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. Today, Dean and I are going to talk about our service and some of the issues that we've faced in setting up our service to deliver services and assistance to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients. And we'll basically split the presentation into two, with I'll do the first part and then Dean will do the second part. Just by way of introduction, I'm the Executive Officer of knowmore, and I've been in that role for about 18 months now. Prior to that, I joined knowmore at the beginning as the principal lawyer, so I've been involved with the organisation since the beginning. And Dean came on board very much around the same time as one of our first Aboriginal engagement advisors back in 2013. Dean will tell you a little bit about himself shortly and his role. I wanted to start by just setting a little bit around the context of our service and the work that we do. Obviously, we've been established to help people who are engaging with the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse. Many of you would know that Royal Commission has been running for several years now, and it was established by the then Gillard government back in early 2013. The terms of reference of the Royal Commission required it to undertake a function of bearing witness to the stories of people who had suffered childhood sexual abuse in institutional contexts. And the Royal Commission is quite unique in that it has set up a mechanism through the legislation, the federal statute, which allows for people to attend private sessions with Royal Commissioners and speak about their experience. And to date, over 6,000 people have done that around Australia and met privately with one of the commissioners and commission staff to talk about their experience, the impacts of that experience, and what they'd like to see happen in the future so that other children aren't subjected to the same experiences. So that's been a huge take-up rate, and when the terms of reference were drafted, there was consultation with relevant sectors, including the community legal sector, and the National Association of Community Legal Centres made a submission to government pointing out quite correctly that if people were going to engage with this Royal Commission, and particularly survivors of institutional childhood sexual abuse, that would be very difficult, and they would require significant supports, including legal assistance, to enable them to do that. So our service came about as a result of that submission from NACLAC, and we operate as a program of NACLAC funded through the Commonwealth Government. As such, we're subject to a funding agreement, and that set out the sorts of services that we are to provide: legal advice, information and referral. We don't represent people before the Royal Commission. We don't represent them in ongoing claims for compensation, such as a civil claim or redress, and we refer them to lawyers who meet specific criteria around expertise and trauma-informed practice in that regard. It was envisaged that we would provide counselling services, and that would be on a short-term basis to help clients understand the advice that we were giving them and to enable them to give instructions, often in the context of recounting very traumatic experiences in their life. And we were to undertake community outreach, information and education sessions, and Dean's part of the presentation will focus particularly on that work. The Royal Commission has now closed the registrations for private sessions. They've hit a number of people in the queue, and as they are to finish by the end of next year, they had to close those registrations. So our outreach work will change a little bit now that that's happened, from community awareness and information work towards more engaging with specific clients. The funding agreement also made some provisions around our staffing model, and obviously to have appropriately qualified lawyers, but there was a specific provision that we needed to engage specialist staff for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients, and that staff should be experienced in dealing with victims of sexual assault and trauma. Coming on board to the service in early 2013, we always knew that there would be a significant number of Indigenous people who potentially would come within the terms of reference of the Royal Commission. We also knew that for many people, many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients, there would be a level of mistrust around engaging with any institution such as the Royal Commission or indeed our legal service, and we were always very conscious to try and structure our service in a way that enabled Indigenous Australians to feel comfortable in engaging with us and then making a choice about whether they wanted to engage with the Royal Commission. And we're very conscious of past history. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have participated in many inquiries: the Stolen Generations Inquiry, the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, and much of the early feedback we got from communities and key stakeholders was, why will this Royal Commission be any different? Why should we come and tell our story about our most personal and private and traumatic experiences, what would we gain from it. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to set up a service that, although we're a mainstream service, we're not an identified Aboriginal organisation, that was a welcoming and supportive service for Indigenous clients. That's reflected in our strategic plan. One of the challenges in building our service was that we had no idea how many clients would seek to engage with us and where they would be, and so we did set some priority groups, of which Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people were a primary one. We focused on clients or potential client groups who experience high levels of disadvantage in engaging with the Royal Commission or other services, and prisoners is another group. Obviously there's overlap between some of those categories on the current slide there. Just to talk a little bit about the prison engagement, the Royal Commission has had a prison engagement strategy of visiting what will be every prison around Australia to provide opportunities for prisoners to tell their story if they want to. Obviously being conscious that amongst our prison population there is a very high percentage of prisoners who have been institutionalised as children and unfortunately suffered childhood sexual abuse in that context. So we've been supporting the Royal Commission's prison engagement strategy by going to prisons and providing legal assistance to clients about the questions that they have. And the strategy is rolled out in Victoria and New South Wales, New South Wales to begin with, then Victoria and South Australia, but also recently here in Queensland. And just wanted to let people know that in the Queensland environment we now have had over 500 prisoners come forward as clients of our service, which I think the current prison population in Queensland is about 8,000, 8,500. So that's a hugely significant number when you think of some of the challenges and that particular environment. But over 500 people have come forward from within Queensland prisons to engage with us and seek advice. And many of those clients have been Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Our service model, very much a multidisciplinary approach to service with lawyers, social workers and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander engagement advisors working together, supported by a small operational team. Dean will talk more about how that all works in practice, and particularly with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients. But we do try and operate as a trauma-informed service and look at what clients need and then provide wraparound services. And for engaging with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients, having a culturally safe and appropriate service is really key to engaging effectively and being able to meet their needs. Many of our clients suffer very ongoing and debilitating levels of trauma as a result of the abuse that they suffered in institutions, and that has had lifelong consequences. And we've found this has been common in the prison environment, but also across the general client population, that many clients are now coming forward for the first time to disclose their childhood experience of abuse, having never made a disclosure before, or having only made a disclosure as a child and been disbelieved around what they had to say. So many people for the first time in their life are starting to look at dealing with those issues in a way of engaging support and taking some steps such as getting some legal advice around options that are open to them. We've listed there on the slide the principles of trauma-informed practice. We are an organisation that works very closely around the concept of respect for our clients and for our staff, and ensuring that our clients are given information that enables them to make choices around what they do and what decisions they're going to make about their options. We've got a team of specialist Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, and there's a slide there providing a little bit of information around that. Our number of Indigenous clients has continued to increase and is now sitting at around 22%. That slide is data current as of the end of the financial year, so we're in the process of updating that. But at the moment, about 22% of our clients identify as Indigenous Australians, and in the last month, particularly with the heavy focus that we've had on prison work here in Queensland, that number has risen to 33% of last month's new clients. So a hugely significant number, percentage of our client group. Talking today about culturally safe and secure services, there's just a couple of definitional slides there. I'll be talking about how we've structured the organisation to try and facilitate a culturally secure work environment for our Indigenous staff members. And I just wanted to, in that context, recognise the great work that they do and how difficult that role can be, engaging with community members who've suffered complex trauma. And it's an incredibly challenging role, and we've been fortunate to recruit a wonderful team that's led by Dean, and they've led the way in providing a culturally safe environment and ensuring that all of our staff deliver culturally competent and appropriate services. Cultural security definition came up around this in an evaluation undertaken of our service recently, which I'll come back to at the end of the presentation. But there's a definition there around the conditions that an organisation creates and provides to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients, but also staff, to ensure their safety. And as I said, we're very aware of the demanding nature of the role that our Aboriginal staff undertake, and we've tried to work with the team to support them in undertaking some pretty tough work at times. As I mentioned, we're a mainstream service. We're not an identified Aboriginal organisation, and we've always been conscious of that in engaging with Indigenous clients. In terms of how we've established the service, I should acknowledge that we are fortunate to have been well funded and to had a reliable source of funding for the life of our organisation, which has made planning much easier than many in this sector have to grapple with funding issues and uncertainty, and it's enabled us to recruit the staff that have been necessary to undertake this work. And we've from the beginning had a focus on recruiting staff who are experienced in dealing with our client group and dealing with the trauma that they've suffered. Dean will talk a little bit about his particular background. We've been able in our engagement team to recruit a variety of staff with experience. Gender balance is particularly important. We have many clients, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, who express a preference to engage with staff members of a particular discipline and a particular gender rather, and that's because of their own experience of abuse and difficulties that they may have engaging with people of a particular gender about those personal experiences. Also been mindful of cultural issues and appropriateness and safety for people there in gender issues. Key thing we've done is try and develop a workplace culture where there is a significant emphasis placed on delivering culturally competent and appropriate services, and we start that by recruiting people who have those skills and experience. It's been an ongoing process in the induction of all new staff. We do have compulsory cultural competence training, which began at a reasonably basic or introductory level to ensure that staff understood what they needed to know at that level, but it's progressed for all of our teams to a much more a much deeper level as their skills and experience has developed, and some of our staff have undertaken ongoing workshops around healing within Indigenous communities and particular models of healing designed to develop their understanding of intergenerational trauma and many of the challenges that Indigenous people face. There is no lead discipline. Our engagement team's fully integrated within our service model, and probably if we do have a lead discipline, it is the engagement team when it comes to engaging with Indigenous clients and Indigenous communities, and there's a clear expectation that all of our staff will follow the advice and seek the expert advice of our engagement team. Dean works as the team leader and is part of the management team, so we have the engagement team has a full say in our management activities and represented with all of the disciplines there, and that helps us to apply to think about any cultural impacts and issues for Indigenous clients when we're thinking about what our work practices are and how we're going to reach out, how would Indigenous clients view what we're thinking of doing and what do they need. So that's an issue that we'd always try and address when we're thinking about what we're doing. I wanted to ask Dean to talk a little bit about our cultural care plan. It's something that we developed, as I've touched on. It's been very difficult work for our staff to undertake, particularly when they're members of communities that they're working with, and we've worked very closely with the team over the life of the organisation to develop a cultural care plan to address the needs of the team and to support them in the work that they do. So I'll hand over to Dean to talk about that.
Good morning. My name's Dean Bell. I'm an Aboriginal man from a small country town called Yass in New South Wales. It's near Canberra. I'm from the Ngunnawal peoples. I've had I suppose an extensive education in Aboriginal culture and mainly with my own culture. With dealing with Aboriginal people, I've got a background with DOCS and with the DPP in New South Wales, and over those years I've been able to I suppose enhance my experience with dealing with trauma, especially with Aboriginal people. Our team is a team of 6 Aboriginal people. We have a vast experience and knowledge of Aboriginal culture. We have a really good balance with the gender issue. We have a female person over in Perth, a female person here in Brisbane, a male and female, 2 males and a female in Sydney, and 1 female in Melbourne. We are very aware of our cultural differences more than anything, given that we come from different areas, of Australia, and we have, there is that difference there, and we acknowledge that, regardless of where we're from, what we do, we always are in contact with each other to make sure that we're not crossing any boundaries or any cultural issues that might turn up. We're always in contact with each other, which makes it much easier for not only us but for the staff we work with. When you look at the model itself, is a model that is very, very easy to work with. We have, as Warren's already said, we have no lead discipline. We all work together as a team, and this is the first time I've ever been involved in such a, I suppose, a a structure that's really helped Aboriginal people and hasn't impacted at all on those people. The cultural care plan that we've developed together is a cultural care plan that's that has all of our input into it. We don't really, it's not just my plan. It's not, the Queensland's plan. It's a plan that we've developed together as a team. And when you look at, we have cultural mentors. Cultural mentors are one of the major things that we all need, regardless, because we need to debrief and we need to know that we're, safe in doing that. The quarterly face-to-face meetings, we have those meetings. We do that by Skype, which is much better because we can see each other and we know each other. But there's sometimes when we can't do that, we have to just do it by phone because of us being out on outreach or just not being contactable at the time. That's inclusive of the 1 hour teleconference. Continued financial assistance for client referrals. Sometimes when we do go out in the communities, there's little things that we need to help Aboriginal people with, water, a drink or some food, whichever. Sit down like we used to, so people can go out and have a cup of coffee with each other. We help with that. We help to pay for that cup of coffee or the sandwich or whichever. And it's a really an excellent way to engage, to show that we're not there to as the person that knows everything. We're on level par with everybody, and we don't want to be seen to be the ones that think we know everything. So we don't. So cultural care sessions at knowmore's all staff conference, that in itself is an eye opener, because when you get the 6 of us together and with the staff that they're mainly all they are also for one solicitor who's an Aboriginal person. The staff just are just so collaborative. They work with us. They listen and they understand what we're saying. They are a group of people that I believe are what to say. I'm just trying to think of different words. They're very they take in what we do say, and they believe that sort of like we know and we do know what we're talking about, and they listen to us, and they then carry out what we suggest they do. When you look at the cultural care plan itself, it's something that I believe that every organisation should have if they've got Aboriginal workers. It helps the worker themselves to get a hold of their own culture, and that's one thing that I really encourage everybody to do, and that is to have a look at that, and sort of like, and if you have a look at our cultural care plan, that's what we've developed ourselves, and that's what we think we should do. And if you do this, well, you should sit down and just have a good talk with your worker, and the workers should all talk together anyway, and just have a look at see what they would prefer to do, how they would like to do that, and those sorts of issues. Like I was saying before, with this this model, it's a very unique model, sort of like, and working with No More as an Aboriginal worker, it's a privilege really to be there to help those people that have so many issues that when you do talk with them, there's just so much that people have said, and they want and they need support, and they don't realise that they need that support. But with No More services there, like we, as Warren's already said, we work together really well, and then saying really well, we we know when we look at each other that we need them to be, say for instance the counsellors, we need them to be involved, and then we'll have them involved, and then and they are very well trained, I suppose, more than anything, to know what to say, what not to say. Yeah, I think I'll just hand back to Warren now. And
thanks, Dean. I'll just finish. There's another couple of slides talking about our culturally secure services, and beyond developing, I guess, the internal culture of the workplace, there are a number of things that we've done which are sort of overt or outward-looking manifestations that we are a welcoming organisation for Indigenous clients. We've developed a number of specific resources, brochures, wallet cards and posters specifically for Indigenous clients. In all of our offices we display Indigenous artwork and flags. They're small things, but they're also important in signalling to clients. And I could just tell a story about a group of Aboriginal women who are clients of our Brisbane office, who come from a country community, but often come down to Brisbane to see us or to do other business. And some of them are quite elderly, but they make a practice of dropping into our Brisbane office to sit down and have a cup of tea with the staff. And they've explained that they just like coming in. It's a nice place and a safe place, and they feel good when they're there. So that was something I was really pleased to hear as the CEO of the organisation, that we've been able to create that environment through our Brisbane team, that those clients feel safe to come in and have a yarn to us at any stage. We've also had a focus on advocacy and policy, responding to the Royal Commission submissions, and in other areas making submissions to government about necessary reforms. And we've always tried to have a focus in those submissions on the needs, in particular, of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients. And one response we did late last year was around the ongoing therapeutic support needs of clients, and through our particular experience of assisting so many Indigenous survivors, and with the views of Dean's team, we were able to set out in some detail the specific needs that our clients had told us about, which are quite different to non-Indigenous Australians, and the sorts of therapeutic responses that they are looking for. Many Aboriginal people are looking for much more traditional community-based responses, and we were able to give a voice to that. Just on the next slide, I mentioned artwork. That's a photo of our Perth team, and we're very fortunate that one of our lawyers in Perth helped a client in the beginning when we established the office, and he was very grateful for the services he'd received, and he indicated that he was very aware of the taxing nature of the work that our staff are undertaking, and he thought they should be in an environment where they were surrounded by artwork which would inspire them and help to take their mind off some of the issues that they're dealing with. And through a connection with Janet Holmes-Court, he was able to organise for us to have on loan some of the pieces of artwork from her very extensive collection. So for the last couple of years, our Perth team have been working surrounded by some very valuable and impressive artworks, and have enjoyed that immensely. I'll hand back now to Dean to talk about outreach and how the team's worked. Some of the challenges we've faced as a national service is engaging in communities where we don't have a direct connection. We do have, as Dean's explained, a number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, but we don't have anything like connections or deep connections into many parts of the country and many communities. So that's a challenge that we've had to overcome. And also just recognising the needs of this client group. The more traditional models of service delivery, of advertising of services and running advice clinics and those sorts of models haven't worked for us because we know that people are going to be reluctant to come forward and talk about feelings relating to very private incidents in their childhood, and are only going to do that where a safe environment has been created. They're not going to turn up and put their name down for an advice clinic or talk about their legal needs in an open way. So our approach to outreach has been very much around engagement that is respectful and appropriate and builds trust. And I'll get Dean to talk about how that has worked in practice and some of the principles that underlie our engagement activities with communities and with clients.
Thanks, Warren. Warren's right there too. When we do look at our engagement, the other thing that we've got to do is we've got to live and work in Aboriginal communities. You know, not only where we come from, but we're related to a lot of people around the country. And you know, when we do look at that, it's a very hard thing to do to talk about sexual abuse, family violence, and domestic violence. It's a really hard I suppose place to be, but you know, with the experience that we've got and with the support that we've got from the rest of the team, we do that pretty well. I won't say pretty well easy, but we do it with a lot of understanding and a lot of assistance from other co-workers. For us to do that, we've got a lot of work to do that that's not on our duty statements. You know, we do a lot of work that you know, especially when we do go to another area where you don't come from. You know, we've got to do a lot of work with getting in contact with the elders and saying to the elders, you know, who we are, what we are, you know, what we do. And you know, first there's got to be that acceptance that we are Aboriginal people for a start, and the acceptance that we're there to help the communities with what they, you know, the very sensitive issues that we're there for, with you know, child sexual abuse especially. When I look at the mainstream, when you look at knowmore as an organisation, you know, it is a mainstream organisation. A lot of Aboriginal people think that we are an Aboriginal organisation, and we're not, and they just can't understand. Just, you know, sort of when they look at that, just how we all work together, and the coordination we've got more than anything with each other, like especially with lawyers, with social workers, and with us as Aboriginal engagement workers. We have a really good way of doing it, and the main thing with that, I think, is that when you look at each office, you know, like I said, we're different cultures, and we do it in a different way in each office and in each area, which really does show just you know, the commitment by not only the workers but also the non-Aboriginal workers that work at knowmore. I'll just hand back to Warren. He can give you a little bit more.
Thanks, Dean. That's a photo. Dean's on the right there. That's our New South Wales or Sydney-based engagement team. Bob Young, Glendra Stubbs and Dean on the right there. We recently nominated them, and they were a finalist in the Aboriginal Justice Award by the Law and Justice Foundation. So that was a significant honour for the team to be chosen as a finalist there in New South Wales. The next few slides, I think we've covered a little around our approach to outreach and community engagement. We do work very closely with other existing services, knowing again that clients are often going to be reluctant to come forward and speak up about their experiences directly in the same way that they might do with other legal issues. So we've worked very closely with the ATSLs around Australia, several of whom have had identified community engagement positions established for the Royal Commission. We also work very closely with the Family Violence Prevention Legal Services, and particularly around outreach programs that have been designed to set up an environment where people might feel safe in coming forward to engage with our team. We also work very closely with the Royal Commission. We are independent of them, but we've worked closely with their community engagement team, and we had Aboriginal staff on board from the day we opened our doors in July 2013. It took the Royal Commission some months after that to get their Indigenous engagement team up and running, but we have worked closely with them and shared knowledge and conducted joint outreach where appropriate. We've developed specific Indigenous engagement strategies for each state and territory, which was a plan of engagement with particular communities. We knew after our initial experience of outreach and engagement that we couldn't hope to engage effectively with every community in Australia during the life of our organisation, and to do it properly in the way that communities need. We found with some communities that we had to go back 3, 4, 5 times to develop relationships of trust where clients felt ultimately safe and trusted us to come forward to talk about their stories. So rather than try and have the shotgun approach, we wanted to do it right, and we've focused our resources on specific communities and looked at barriers that exist to engagement to try and overcome those for those communities and their members. So the next couple of slides talk about our engagement principles. Acknowledge, respect, a key understanding, building connections in the local community, often with service agencies such as health services that already exist and are delivering services to people who might be within the terms of reference of the Royal Commission. Respect is essential. Feedback, we've always placed a great emphasis on ensuring that we close the loop with outreach and that we report back to communities, that we keep our word and do what we say, and that we follow up. And then ultimately that we review all of our outreach and work out what worked, what didn't work and why, and what we might be able to do next time. And you know, there may be issues there around the level of preparation that we undertook and the liaison with local services. With some of the things we've learned that often clients will want to engage with us but not do so within their local community, so we need to make arrangements to see them in another location and to provide safety for them to engage outside their community. It's often an overriding concern that people are very mindful about their privacy and people talking about them in the community, so they do want to engage with us very privately. The next is just a slide around our planning process, underpinned by research, and as I mentioned, we're often going into communities where our staff don't have a particular local connection already, so we have to build that, and we have to understand the history of that community, what institutions were there, what impact they had, what impact those institutions, and it might be something like a church, continue to have in the local community that might influence clients in their engagement with us. Are people who are perpetrators still in that community? All of those sorts of factors we have to look at. And then working through the process to develop our outreach and ensure that we've got addressing the needs of the community and that we've got the right staff involved. The next is just a pictorial representation of some of the outreach. In the top left-hand corner is an event, very informal, again trying to create the sort of atmosphere where community members develop trust in our organisation. That's one of our Aboriginal lawyers reclining on the grass there and speaking to people. over on the right, that was an art day in Western Australia that we conducted in together with one of the family violence prevention legal services there. Again, creating an environment. We know that going and setting up a no more stall at an event people are not going to come up and talk to us and identify themselves as survivors of childhood abuse. But if we do another type of event and get people talking to our staff, then they have that opportunity to have a personal conversation and to understand what we do. And the bottom left-hand corner is just an example of remote outreach into communities in the corners of Western Australia and the Northern Territory and South Australia. We didn't have any particular connections with those communities beyond some fairly loose connections that our Western Australian worker had, but she undertook a very detailed process of engagement and planning before we went into those lands. That's where we've been. Pretty much we've been right around the country, and many of those places we've been on repeated visits to develop trust to enable effective engagement. The final slide, just to note that there has been an evaluation done of our service, and it looked at the aims of our strategic plan, including providing widely accessible and culturally appropriate services. So there is a significant section in that report if you're interested in this area or looking at your own services around what we've done and what the evaluators' views around our service structure and our service delivery approach have been. So that's on our website for people to read, and it's probably another reflection on how our model has worked that yesterday in the Northern Territory there was an official launch for the new legal advisory service for the Northern Territory Royal Commission into the protection and detention of children in the Northern Territory. That service has been established to help people who are engaging with that Royal Commission, and the model is very similar to the No More model of staffing and service delivery. So it's good to see that that's been replicated for the needs of those clients in the Northern Territory, and NARGE's operating that service there. But the evaluation report provides some more information around our service. All right, that's all from us, so we're happy if we've got time for any questions.
Big thanks to Warren and Dean for that presentation. Reminder, folks, that you can ask questions in two ways. You can press that button that looks like a hand on your control panel, and we can unmute your microphone and you can ask a question. The other way that you can ask a question is to type something into the questions box. While we're waiting for some questions to come through, I, of course, have a few to get started. Guys, the traditional model of legal services is sometimes lawyer in a room with an individual client with a support worker, and that may or may not be an Aboriginal engagement advisor or someone else. But it's not always been culturally appropriate in your experience, I understand, to have that kind of one-to-one model. I wonder if you've got some examples of other ways that you've been delivering services, legal services, in quite a different way as a result of your kind of culturally informed practice.
Thanks, James. I might start and Dean can add to my thoughts. We found many Indigenous clients, the pathway into the organisation is to speak and develop a relationship with one of Dean's team, first of all. They are not comfortable in speaking with a counsellor or a lawyer. They want to speak to an Aboriginal person and develop a relationship of trust. And Dean, I'm sure, can speak of a couple of case examples where clients have sounded him out at some length and developed trust in him, which has then enabled him, once he's got that relationship, to introduce them to the person who can help address their legal needs, such as a lawyer or a counsellor who can look at their support needs, but that relationship is brokered on the trust that they've established as an Aboriginal person with our Aboriginal worker. And the Aboriginal worker may then come back into and out of those engagements to continue to support that client. We've also found many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people want to engage. They have connections with fellow survivors that they grew up in institutions with, and they want to engage as a group and move ahead and speak to us as a service. And again, that often starts with the engagement team developing that relationship and talking about what we can do, and then setting up the introduction, but listening very much to what the community and what that group needs, and who they feel comfortable in talking with, and getting to a stage where they are comfortable in seeking individual responses to their particular issues and their legal needs. And we have often attended community meetings to speak about our service and provide information, leave that information with people to digest, and then contact our engagement advisors to set up individual appointments from there, again working with the community on what they need. Then do you have a couple of client story?
One of the matters that I could let you know about is with prison engagement. This was in Victoria. I went down to a prison. I had with the Royal Commission, and we'd gone and we'd done the initial stages of the engagement. From there, I saw this. There was an Aboriginal man, an older man. He's probably in his 70s, 71, 72, I think he was, and we both looked at each other and just nodded at each other, and that was it. Then from that engagement, we then went to left and went home and all that, and then the next day I got a call asking me to come and support this person. I had no idea who he was, but anyway, I did go back and support the person when we did have the sessions at the prisons. The man that I did support was a man who I just nodded at, and so we ended up going through I was sitting with the session with him. The commissioner asked him, why did you want to tell your story? He just looked at me and pointed at me and said, him. And I thought, oh no, what did I do? And he said, well, when I first saw you, I knew I could trust you, and I knew that I could let you know about my story. And his story happened some 55 years previous to what he, to being able to tell that story to anybody. He kept that to himself for all that time. And he knew that he could trust me, and it really made him, I suppose, happy and trustworthy of me, which really, sort of like cements what we're here to do, and that is to help people tell their stories. It's a really hard thing for people to bring those things that they've stored in the back of their minds for the most of their lives. Sort of like, and they just when it did happen, most of them didn't. They weren't believed, which really gives them sort of like are really sort of down there. They said, well, I can't tell anybody, and that's it. But by going to the Royal Commission and telling their stories there, that really helps them to do what they need to do, and that is have that that assurance that they can tell their stories without being sort of told that they can't, they won't be believed at all. And it really helps them so much. It really does.
A couple more minutes for questions to come in, folks. You can type them into the questions box or press that button that looks like a hand on your control panel. Guys, learning from our mistakes, what would you have done differently had you had your time again in this space?
There's probably a lot of things that, given time, I could think about. I think we always knew engaging with communities would be very complex. I think we probably underestimated the complexity and just the depth of engagement for many communities, and we did in time develop, particularly with some of the more regional and remote communities, better ways of communicating about what the Royal Commission is and about how systems work. And I can think of one example where one of our lawyers explained the Royal Commission's processes in a very visual way for a group of male elders in a remote community. English wasn't their first language. We did have interpreters, but he did a representation where he moved around in a circle representing the different steps of engaging with our service and the Royal Commission, and together with an interpreter, that was an effective way of communicating those concepts to that client group. But I think at the outset, and particularly given the time in which our service came together, we probably did not have a full appreciation of exactly how complex some of the engagement would be, and the level of trust and engagement that we'd need to establish. So that's one thing. I think the take-up level amongst the prison population, and particularly Indigenous clients, has surprised us. We always knew that there would be a high level of survivors in the prison environment, but that so many would feel safe to come forward and engage with us probably was a little surprising, given the type of environment that prison is and the lack of supports. We found again many of those prisoners have never made disclosures before, despite having opportunities to do so in mitigation of sentence or in psychiatric and psychological assessments for various court purposes. So that's been quite surprising. That it's great we've been able to help those people, but it's placed a pretty significant drain on resources as well.
Final question from me. Dean, you talked about the value of a cultural care plan for organisations that have or might be looking to bring on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander workers. Just from a kind of procedural perspective, how did you go about developing that plan, and how could other legal services do the same thing?
I think the main thing that we did with that is that we sat down together as a team, and we I suppose got all of our ideas together, and just put it on the board and just said, well, okay, we'll have a look at this. What about this? What about that? We did it. I think we did probably 5 or 6 hours, probably more, and we just sort of like put a lot of things together, and things that might work, or could work, or or won't work. We put those all together, and we just said, well, okay, let's have a look at what we've got. And we really, as a team, we really, worked out how to do and how not to do, which would work, which won't work. And, from that, we've got just those. We've got a whole lot more other things that we could have put in there, but we didn't do that because of, sort of, I suppose, our work itself. It really is, it's traumatic for us too, and we really need to take that on board. And it's work that really makes I suppose us realize that we're there in a position that really does it takes everything out of you. It really does, sort of like. And when you look at cultural safety, that's what we ensure, that we make sure we have that as our prime target, to make sure that our clients are culturally safe if they want to tell their stories.
On behalf of all of those people sitting and clapping and cheering wildly at their computers across well, not just Queensland, across Australia. Can I thank you, Dean and Warren, for sharing the experiences from your work at knowmore. I think the rate of, or the percentage of your clients who identify themselves as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is a reflection on what's been a very thoughtful and deliberate and incredibly well executed approach to ensuring that your services are safe and secure for those people. Thanks for the work that you're doing, and thanks for sharing it with us. Thanks everyone who tuned in this morning. We'll circulate a copy of the recording, assuming the technology works, and the PowerPoint by email in the next little while, and look forward to speaking to you soon. Have a great day.